Dr. Vex's hands trembled as she brushed centuries of dust from the crystalline data core. The ancient archive chamber, sealed for over 500 cycles, held secrets that could reshape Grixian understanding of galactic history. Her antennae twitched with excitement, picking up the faint electromagnetic signatures still pulsing within the crystal. "Begin recording," she chittered to her field assistant drone. "Archive excavation log, cycle 2847, deep sector facility T9. The drone's lights blinked in acknowledgement as Vex carefully connected her analyzer to the data core's interface port. The holographic display flickered to life, casting eerie blue light across her iridescent exoskeleton. Warning: restricted access. Threat classification Omega. Subject: Terra Earth quarantine zone. Curious, Vex muttered. Earth was supposedly destroyed during the Great Collapse. Why maintain such high security protocols for a dead world? The display shifted, showing a series of images that made her secondary heart stutter: massive cities that seamlessly merged with mountain ranges, weapons that harnessed solar flares, and beings that looked devastatingly simple yet moved with predatory grace. "If you find this archive, pray they're truly gone." The warning text pulsed an angry red, but Vex couldn't stop reading. Each data packet revealed more impossible truths about the species called humans. They should have been extinct. Their planet was too hostile, their bodies too fragile, their technology too primitive. Yet the archive told a different story. "You expect the High Command to believe this fantasy?" Commander Vex's voice dripped with disdain as he paced the briefing chamber. His polished carapace reflected the holographic images Vex had brought from the archive. "The evidence is irrefutable." Commander Vex projected another recording. "This footage shows humans repelling a Nexus swarm invasion, the same swarm that decimated 3 advanced civilizations." The room fell silent as they watched mere humans systematically dismantle what had been considered an unstoppable force. They didn't just fight, they adapted mid-battle, turning the swarm's own biological weapons against them. "That's impossible," one of the council members whispered. "The Nexus swarm's neural network cannot be hacked." "They didn't hack it," Vex interrupted. "They infected it." With music, she played another clip, this one showing humans broadcasting rhythmic sound patterns that drove the swarm into chaos. Vex's mandibles clicked in agitation. Even if this archive is genuine, Earth was destroyed. We all know the stories. The planet turned to ash during the Great Collapse. "Then explain this." Vex activated her final piece of evidence, a real-time sensor reading showing faint but complex signal patterns emanating from Earth's sector. These aren't random emissions, they're encrypted communications, using protocols that match the archive's records. "If humans were advanced enough to survive, why hide?" another council member asked. The archive's answer appeared unbidden on the main display, text written in ancient Grixian script. "They didn't survive extinction. They mastered it. They learned that the greatest predator is the one you don't believe exists." As if in response to the words, the sensor reading spiked. New signals, stronger now, pulsed from the direction of Earth. They were like nothing in the Grixian database, yet the archive recognized them instantly. "I command." Vex's voice wavered slightly. "I don't believe Earth was destroyed. I believe humans want us to think it was. And given our resource crisis, given the rich, supposedly empty sector they inhabit." She let the implications hang in the air. Vac finally stopped pacing. "Assemble an expedition team," he ordered. "Minimal armament. We don't want to appear threatening if you're wrong." "Dr. Vex," he turned to face the scientist. "And if you're right, we don't want to appear threatening if you're right either." As the council chambers emptied, Vex remained, studying the final archive entry. The words seemed to stare back at her. "Remember, if you're reading this, they allowed you to find it. Ask yourself why." The signal pulses from Earth's sector continued, steady as a heartbeat, patient as a hunter. The expedition ship Twilight Seeker dropped out of fold space with barely a ripple. Commander Vac had insisted on using their most advanced stealth systems, though Dr. Vex wondered if such precautions mattered. The archive had made one thing clear: humans had a habit of knowing more than they should. "Preliminary scan complete," the sensor officer announced. "You'll." Want to see this, Commander? The main viewport shifted, revealing what should have been a dead world. Instead, Earth pulsed with life and energy. Massive structures orbited the planet like a steel and crystal dance, some larger than small moons. The continents below were a patchwork of gleaming cities and verdant wilderness, as if technology and nature had negotiated a peace treaty. Impossible, Vac whispered. Their energy output exceeds the total production of the Grixian Empire. Vex's antennae twitched as her instruments detected something else. Commander, I'm reading multiple species signatures. Not just human, she adjusted her scanners. Some of these are Nexus swarm biosignatures, but they're different, changed. Changed how? They appear to be domesticated. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans hadn't just defeated the swarm, they'd repurposed it. A light flashed on the communications console. Incoming transmission, the comm officer reported. They're using our most secure encryption protocols. Protocols we developed last cycle. The view screen activated without command. A human face appeared disarmingly normal, save for the subtle glow behind its eyes that suggested extensive cybernetic enhancement. Grixian vessel Twilight Seeker. The human said in perfect high Grixian, your stealth systems are impressive. We've been timing how long it would take our outer sensors to detect you naturally. Current average 2.3 seconds. Please maintain your position while we calibrate our response protocols. Vac's mandibles clicked in agitation. Response protocols. The human smile didn't reach those glowing eyes. Standard first contact procedures, though in your case we're using Protocol 7B. Would you like to know why? Enlighten us, Vac managed. Because we engineered your resource crisis. The bridge erupted in chittering protests. Vex stepped forward. Why? Educational purposes, the human replied. We needed to understand how your species handles scarcity. Whether you'd turn to conquest or cooperation, the fact that you're here, approaching with minimal weapons and a science vessel, speaks well of you. A second human appeared on screen, this one's modifications more obvious, with crystalline structures growing from their shoulders that looked disturbingly similar to Nexus swarm armor. I'm Admiral Quinn, Earth Defense Command, the second human said. Your civilization has reached a crossroads. You can either turn back now, pretend you never found us, and face your resource crisis alone. They paused, those crystal formations shifting color. Or you can proceed to the coordinates we're transmitting, where you'll begin the evaluation process. Evaluation, Vac's translator struggled with the word. Every species that joins our alliance must prove their worth, Admiral Quinn explained. Not through strength, we have plenty of that, but through adaptability, innovation, the willingness to change. Vex noticed movement outside the ship. Massive structures were unfolding from what had appeared to be debris, forming a precise geometric pattern around the Twilight Seeker. Those are quantum fold inhibitors, she realized aloud. We couldn't retreat, even if we wanted to. The first human's smile widened. Dr. Vex, we've been watching your career with great interest. Your discovery of our archive wasn't an accident. Consider it your first test. And now, Vac demanded. Admiral Quinn's crystal formations pulsed with soft light. Now you choose. Return to your dying empire, or face the trials that will determine if you're worthy of joining ours. You have 1 hour to decide. The transmission cut. Through the viewport, Earth continued its serene rotation, its orbital rings glinting like a predator's teeth in starlight. They've been manipulating us for generations, Vac said quietly. Everything, the resource crisis, the archive, this mission. We've been dancing to their tune all along. Vex studied the sensor readings of those impossible orbital structures, of the transformed Nexus swarm bioforms, of the seamless blend of technology and nature that defied everything she thought she knew about progress. No, Commander, she replied. They haven't been manipulating us. They've been teaching us. The question is, are we ready to learn? The quantum fold inhibitors hummed silently in space, their formation perfect, patient, and utterly inevitable. Like humanity itself, they offered both a cage and a doorway. The choice was theirs. The consequences would be too. Welcome to Adaptation Center 7, the human guide announced as the Grixian delegation emerged from their shuttle. Lieutenant Commander Jules Quinn, daughter of the admiral they'd met via transmission, looked deceptively normal compared to many of her augmented colleagues. Only the subtle shimmer of her skin betrayed the presence of adaptive nanites. Vac and Vex followed her into what appeared to be a massive biodome. The air itself seemed alive with microscopic machines, and the walls pulsed with organic circuitry. "Your species chose wisely," Jules said, leading them past a training ground where human children were playing what looked like a simple game of tag. Most visitors don't realize they're watching our youngest combat unit in training. Vex's analyzers went wild. The children's movements weren't random, they were executing complex tactical maneuvers disguised as play. Their laughter masked subsonic communications, and their games rewrote the environment's molecular structure in real time. "How old?" Vac asked, mandibles tight with concern. 7 to 10 Earth years, Jules replied. "We start them young, not out of cruelty but necessity. The universe isn't kind to species that fail to adapt." They passed through a security field that tingled against their exoskeletons. Beyond it lay something that made even Vac's warrior composure crack: a Nexus Swarm Queen, over 30 meters tall, interfacing directly with human technicians. "Impossible," Vex whispered. "The queens can't be controlled. Their hive mind was perfectly designed for neural synchronization." A new voice interrupted. A human emerged from behind the queen, his body marked with living circuitry that mimicked swarm patterns. "We didn't control them. We offered them something better than conquest evolution." Jules nodded. "Dr. James Harper, head of our Living Weapons Division. He volunteered to become our first human swarm hybrid." "Volunteered?" Vac's translator squealed with confusion. "The basis of human advancement," Harper explained, the swarm patterns on his skin shifting color. "We don't just adapt our environment. We adapt ourselves." He gestured to the queen. "Maria here helps us train our next generation of hybrid soldiers. Her children are born understanding both human and swarm warfare protocols." Alarm blared suddenly, and Jules's expression tightened. "Right on schedule. Would you like to see why we're so cautious with new species?" Before either Grixian could respond, the biodome's walls turned transparent. Outside, a battle was unfolding. A ship bearing the marks of a rival Grixian faction, the Midnight Claw separatists, had breached the outer defense perimeter. "Your people's resource crisis breeds desperation," Jules commented. "The Midnight Claw thought they could steal our technology while we were distracted with your diplomatic mission." The response from Earth's defenses was unlike anything in recorded warfare. The orbital rings realigned, focusing sunlight into precise beams that herded the intruders into a containment zone. Then, something even more extraordinary happened. The atmosphere itself came alive. "Weather control?" Vex asked, her scientific curiosity overwhelming her horror. "Atmospheric microorganisms," Harper corrected. "A joint project with the reformed swarm. Watch." The living storm engulfed the separatist ship. When it cleared, the vessel was intact but completely immobilized, covered in a crystalline growth similar to Harper's modifications. "They'll live," Jules assured them. "In fact, they'll become part of a valuable experiment. Their ship is being reprogrammed on a molecular level. In a few hours, they'll be asking to join our adaptation programs." "You're not just showing us your defenses," Vac realized. "This is part of our trial." Jules's smile was eerily similar to her father's. "Everything is part of the trial, Commander. Even this conversation." "The resource crisis," Vex clicked suddenly. "You didn't engineer it to test us. You engineered it to save us from ourselves, without scarcity pushing us to change." "You would have stagnated," Harper finished. "Like so many species before you. Those who survive by strength alone eventually fall. Those who learn to adapt, to transform their greatest threats into their greatest assets." He gestured to his swarm-enhanced body, to the hybrid children training nearby, to the living storms that were reconstructing the captured ship. "That's why Earth faked its destruction," Vex said softly. "You needed time to perfect this process, to build a society that could absorb and transform other species without destroying them." Jules led them to a new chamber, where the walls displayed recordings of humanity's past victories. The defeated enemies were now all part of Earth's forces, each transformed and improved rather than destroyed. We've mastered more than extinction, Jules explained. We've mastered evolution itself. The question isn't whether you'll join us. Her skin shimmered with nanites responding to some unseen signal. The question is, how will you change when you do? Through the dome's transparent walls, the captured Midnight Claw ship was already beginning to pulse with new life, its crew experiencing their first steps toward transformation. Above them, the orbital rings continued their eternal dance, ready to either nurture or strike. And somewhere in the playing field behind them, children laughed as they reshaped molecules with their games, preparing for a future where adaptation wasn't just an advantage, it was the only way to survive. "Shall we begin your first real trial?" Jules asked. The Swarm Queen towered above them, a testament to humanity's greatest truth: any enemy could become an ally if you were willing to change together. Vac and Vex exchanged looks. They had come seeking resources. They were about to find so much more. And somewhere in the distance, more human children played their war games, their laughter echoing like evolution's promise. The testing chamber looked deceptively simple, an empty white cube stretching 50 meters in each direction. Vac and Vex stood in its center, their exoskeletons upgraded with temporary human biotech interfaces, a courtesy that felt more like a leash. "Your final trial is straightforward," Admiral Quinn's voice echoed through the chamber. The crystalline growths on his shoulders had spread since their first meeting, suggesting his own continuous evolution. "Survive what comes next, together." Vex's antennae twitched. What exactly is coming? The answer came as the white walls rippled like disturbed water. The chamber transformed into a perfect replica of the Grixian homeworld, not as it was now, but as it had been before the resource crisis. Beautiful. Pristine. Impossible. "This isn't a simulation," Vex realized, her sensors overwhelmed. "You've recreated our world's quantum state from 500 cycles ago." "Correct." Jules Quinn stepped through what appeared to be solid air, her form flickering between human and something far more complex. "We've been recording your planet's quantum signature since before your species achieved spaceflight. This chamber can reproduce any moment in your history." "Why?" Vac demanded, even as his warrior's instincts screamed warnings about the shifting reality around them. "Because Dr. Harper emerged from another ripple in space, his swarm modifications pulsing with anticipation. To join us, you need to understand what really happened to your world. What's still happening, what will always happen, unless you change." The pristine landscape began to degrade before their eyes, centuries of resource depletion and environmental damage happening in minutes. But something was wrong with the progression. These patterns, Vex clicked in sudden understanding. They're not natural. The resource crisis, it wasn't just engineered by you. It's still being engineered, right now, by our own people. Jules nodded. "Watch." The quantum recreation zoomed out, showing not just the Grixian homeworld but hundreds of other planets across their empire. On each world, the same patterns emerged: artificial scarcity created by a small segment of their own population. "The Midnight Claw," Vac hissed. "They're not separatists. They're our leader's own creation. A manufactured threat to maintain control." "Very good." Admiral Quinn stepped into the chamber as reality rippled again. "Now you understand the true trial. Your species faces extinction not from resource depletion, but from institutional stagnation. Your leadership created artificial scarcity to prevent change, to maintain their power structure. We simply accelerated their plan until it became unsustainable." The chamber shifted again, showing possible futures. In one, the Grixian Empire collapsed under its own deceptions. In another, it thrived, but the Grixians themselves were transformed. Their exoskeletons merged with adaptive technology, their rigid hierarchy replaced with something more fluid and resilient. "You have to choose," Jules explained. "Not just for yourselves, but for your entire species. We can help you expose the deception, aid your people in claiming their true potential. But the price is becoming like you." Vex finished, "giving up what we are to become something new." No. Dr. Harper's swarm patterns shifted color. "The price is accepting what you already are, a species capable of continuous evolution." Your leaders buried that truth. We're offering to help you remember it. The chamber filled with images of transformed Grixians, not just physically altered, but socially and culturally evolved. They moved with the same fluid adaptability as the humans, their former rigidity replaced with dynamic possibility. Your scientists, Admiral Quinn gestured to Vex, would become true explorers of possibility, not just catalogers of approved knowledge. Your warriors, he nodded to Vac, would protect through transformation rather than destruction. And the Midnight Claw, Vac asked. Our corrupt leaders. Jules smiled. Why do you think we let them steal our technology? By now, the adaptive organisms on their ships have already begun changing them. Sometimes, those who resist evolution the most become its greatest champions once they understand it. The chamber returned to its blank white state, but now Vac and Vex could see the quantum possibilities shimmering in every surface. Their temporary biotech interfaces hummed with potential. This is the moment, Admiral Quinn said softly. The real test isn't whether you'll survive this chamber. It's whether you're ready to bring this change to your entire civilization. Vex's antennae quivered as she processed the choice before them. All this time we thought humans were the apex predators of this sector. We are, Jules replied. But not through force. We're apex adapters. We don't just survive change, we create it, shape it, become it, and then we teach others to do the same. Vac's warrior training warred with the possibilities he'd witnessed. If we accept, we'll be ending our civilization as we know it. No, Dr. Harper corrected. You'll be fulfilling it. Evolution isn't death, it's the only true form of survival. The chamber hummed with potential as the two Grixians faced their moment of choice. Around them, quantum possibilities shimmered like wings about to unfold. One last truth, Admiral Quinn added. This isn't just your trial, it's humanity's too. Each species we help evolve changes us in return. Perfect adaptation isn't about becoming one thing, it's about becoming all things, together. Vex reached out, her claws intersecting with a quantum field that showed her people's possible futures. We accept, she said. Vac chittered agreement. Not for power, not for resources, but for change itself. The chamber blazed with light as the trial ended and the real transformation began. Above them, Earth's orbital rings shifted position, preparing to share their evolutionary technologies with a new sister world. And in training grounds across the planet, human children continued their games, their laughter echoing across quantum fields as they played at changing reality itself, preparing for a future where the only constant was change, and the only true victory was evolution shared. The age of the apex adapters had begun. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you loved it. Please remember to subscribe if you did like it so you can see more videos like this. And please give us a like and a comment too. I'll see you in the next one.